The recent update to Minecraft 1.21, the Crafter update, has added a lot of cool things. Everybody's really happy with it, but there is one change that's a bit controversial, not so great, and it is a rather obscure mechanic about how mob spawning works in Bedrock Edition, which has the potential to break some farms, and in fact, it has broken my creeper farm. So this is the inside of my creeper farm. It has been severely nerfed in this latest update. As long as I have known Bedrock Edition, maybe as long as it's existed, but at least as far as I know, as long as there's been a Bedrock Edition, the way mobs spawn is they'll appear on the northwest corner of a block. So that's north, that's west. The northwest corner of, say, this block would be right at that corner. Would be where they spawn. So it worked that way forever in Bedrock Edition, and it wasn't that much of a problem. The only issue with having mobs spawn in the northwest corner of a block is if there's a solid block to the north or west of the block the mob is trying to spawn on, the spawn attempt will fail. But after the Caves and Cliffs update came out, the Caves and Cliffs update, which actually changed the terrain generation to make for enormous caves and really big mountains, suddenly it's more of a problem because you'll find a lot of rough terrain with walls to the north or west of any potential spawning location, and so it would kind of make for a lot less mobs appearing. So the devs decided to fix this in the 1.21 update so that now mobs spawn in the center of a block instead of the northwest corner of a block. And this can cause potential problems in existing farms. Now, this change does not affect structure spawns. They still happen in the northwest corner of a block. So if you have a guardian farm or a wither skeleton farm or a witch farm and a witch hut, those are a lot less likely to be affected by this change because the mobs for those structures still spawn in the northwest corner of a block. In the case of this creeper farm, unfortunately, now that mobs spawn in the center of a block, there is now room for spiders to spawn on many of these surfaces. The buttons no longer prevent them from spawning. Now, the obvious solution to this would be just replace all the buttons with trapdoors, and that should once again prevent spiders from spawning in the farm. In theory, that would work, but when I tested that out in my creative test world, I found that yes, I no longer get spiders. However, the creepers' pathfinding is now too confused, and they just kind of stand around where they spawn and don't wander into any of the holes. Now, the problem with getting spiders spawning in this farm is all these holes here, they're big enough for the creepers to fall through, but not the spiders. The spiders will spawn on these platforms and just kind of hang around here forever, taking up the mob cap. And eventually, as you get creepers and spiders spawning, and only the creepers getting disposed of, eventually you build up enough spiders that you just get no more spawns because the mob cap is full of just spiders. Now, I was never really that happy with the yields on this farm. I used to get about 8 stacks of gunpowder an hour from it. But testing it after the update, I found that I was getting a little over 2 stacks of gunpowder in 1 hour. And I suspect very strongly that the longer I sat AFK, the less gunpowder I'd be getting, because it just eventually the mob cap just fills up with spiders and nothing else spawns, and I just get no more drops at all. I contemplated what to do, how to fix this. One way or another, I'm just going to have to rebuild the entire farm somehow. And to decide what I'm going to do is tear this whole thing down and forget about trying to prevent spider spawns, forget about trying to prevent any kind of spawns, just make a general mob farm that will have a way to deal with the spiders and get all kinds of other drops besides just gunpowder. And we'll see if I get significantly less gunpowder than the dedicated creeper farm. I think it'll be just about as good, maybe even a little better. But it means I have to tear this whole thing down and start over. Making this a general purpose mob farm means I'm going to need to upgrade and add a sorting system to sort out all the drops, because it'll be a lot more than just gunpowder now. I can at least leave the Trident Killer as it is. All the hoppers from the Trident Killer are feeding into this hopper line. This makes it so that when there's an item in this hopper is going to be locked until this hopper is empty. So it slows down the pace at which things move through the filters. Each of these filters is set up so that this hopper is only going to accept one type of item. And oh shoot, you know what? There's a flaw in this design, but I'll fix it in a second. So this should only accept gunpowder. And once there's enough gunpowder in there, the comparator is going to put out a signal strong enough to power that block. The repeater turns on, powering this block, turning off the redstone torch, unlocking this hopper, so it will feed the gunpowder to the chest. There's a problem though. I can't use sticks in these slots. At least not these sticks. I need different sticks. Because witches can end up in this general purpose mob farm, and witches drop sticks. So label these in an anvil and replace the generic sticks with these special sticks. That way any actual sticks are going to just pass through all of these filters, because witches will sometimes drop sticks and then end up in this chest. That's my overflow chest. And that's going to have things that are more obscure drops, like once in a while I might get iron ingots or potatoes or carrots from a zombie, or I might get glass bottles from a witch, or sticks, or redstone dust for that matter. But that's not going to be a large amount, and that can fit in the overflow chest. This particular filter is a little bit different. It looks the same, but it doesn't have a hopper underneath this row of hoppers with like a filter like this. Instead, it's just an empty hopper that feeds directly into the chest, and the comparator is just looking at items flowing through this hopper chain. If it's an unstackable item, then this comparator will turn on with enough power to power this block, activate the repeater, powering this block and turning off the redstone torch. So it'll pull out any unstackable items into this chest. And the unstackable items, honestly, I don't want to keep them. There'll be random damaged armor with some random enchantments, random bows, random enchantments on them. I don't want any of that crap. I'm probably just going to dispose of it. And the same will probably be the case for spider eyes, rotten flesh, and arrows. I really have no use for those items, and I might just route all those things together into some kind of disposal system. But I can deal with that later. Now, I need to tear down the old farm. I've really never been a fan of creeper farms. The way mob spawning mechanics work is the game determines a location for a mob to spawn, then it chooses the mob type, and then it determines whether or not the location it's chosen is a legal place for that mob to spawn in. If you spawn-proof your farm against anything except creepers, you're not going to get more creepers spawning more quickly. You're just going to get none of the other mobs. Creepers will spawn at the same rate in a creeper farm as they would in a general purpose mob farm. Now, the argument in favor of a creeper farm, which I don't agree with, is that if you have a lot of other mobs that aren't creepers spawning inside the farm, you're going to fill up the mob cap very quickly, and then you're going to get less overall creepers spawning. But that would only be true if you fill up the mob cap very quickly. That's not how spawning mechanics work in Bedrock Edition. It takes a long time for mobs to spawn in and fill up the cap. If you're dispatching the mobs that spawn within 30 seconds or even within 60 seconds of them appearing, then you're never going to reach the mob cap. In addition, all of that spawn proofing against non-creepers that you do in the farm means less overall spaces in the farm for any mobs to spawn. That's going to slow down your overall spawning rates. So it's just difficult for me to prove it empirically, but my gut feeling is that any general purpose mob farm is going to be at least as efficient for giving you gunpowder as a creeper farm of the same size. In addition, creeper farms tend to use a lot of trapdoors that are very expensive, and one misplaced trapdoor can mess up your whole farm. Whereas the general purpose mob farm that I'm intending to build, although it has some complexity to it, it's a lot harder to screw it up with one misplaced block. I apologize if I'm not going to get into a too detailed description of how this mob farm is built. I'm pretty sure I built one exactly like this or very similar to it in the past, and if I can find a video of myself explaining it, I'll link to it at the end. But here's kind of the summary of what this mob farm does. I made this mock-up in creative mode of it. Looking from the top down here, you can see that it's 19 by 19 or 21 by 21 if you count the walls. And I've kind of cut out the roof to show you what it looks like here. Each floor is 2 blocks thick. So you can kind of see from this cutaway that the floors are 2 blocks thick. It's using a mechanic for Bedrock Edition where mobs can spawn inside of scaffolding, but they can't spawn on top of scaffolding. So they can spawn down inside the scaffolding where it's dry and get pushed by the water streams toward the center. And this poor guy's confused because I didn't complete the floor here. On each level I have a turtle egg. Above the turtle egg there has to be 3 blocks of clearance above the block the turtle egg is on, so that the mobs that are attracted to turtle eggs, like zombies, will see it and think that they can jump up and down on it. If I made the ceiling this low all the way around, 1 block high, the mobs would not be attracted to the egg because they wouldn't be able to think they could jump up and down on it. That's why I need to make the floors too thick. The whole purpose of that turtle egg is if I get baby zombies spawning in here, they will not be pushed by the water streams, but they'll still be attracted to the turtle egg to the center. They have these trapdoors to fool their pathfinding. And as you can see down here, I've extended the scaffolding. This hole is 5 by 5, but I've extended the scaffolding so that it's really a 3 by 3 hole for the mobs to fall into. I have powdered snow here, and the purpose of that powdered snow is to get rid of the spiders. They will not be able to fit down in the pit, and they'll just get pushed by the water stream into the powdered snow, and they'll freeze in it and expire. It takes a little while. It's not the most efficient way to dispatch them, but it does get rid of them. Eventually. I make 4 platforms altogether. So here I just have 1 complete level and 1 partially complete for demonstration purposes, but in the SMP I make 4 levels to this. Theoretically I could have made a 5th level, but much of that probably a SimDistance 4 would have been too far away for mobs to spawn on it. At the bottom of the 5 by 5 pit, they get washed by a water stream into a channel there, and then down into the 2 by 2 pit for the Trident Killer down below. So that's the quick Cliff Note summary of the mob farm design that I used. I have to apologize if I don't really show off a step-by-step instruction about how to build this farm, because I've made a mob farm like this before and I didn't really feel like going into a step-by-step description of it. But I finished it, and boy, it's working really well. Turn that off for a minute. After an hour running this thing, I got a little more than 9 stacks of gunpowder from it. Now, the original creeper farm that I built gave me just about 8 stacks of gunpowder, so this is slightly better for getting gunpowder than the actual creeper farm was. But in addition to that, I get a bunch of bones, I get a bunch of string, there's also arrows, rotten flesh. I put a sorter here for spider eyes, but I probably won't get any spider eyes because the spiders are getting dispatched by the powdered snow inside of this farm. In this overflow chest, I have a bunch of other assorted things that I get from this farm. A little bit of redstone dust, a little bit of iron ingots. There's even some arrows of slowness here, which threw me for a loop for a second there, because I was like, where did they come from? Well, when a skeleton hangs around in powdered snow long enough, it will change into a stray. And that must have happened once or twice, so that I got some arrows of slowness. But down here, I've actually set up a system so that the spider eyes, if there are any, the rotten flesh, and the, what was the other thing? Oh, arrows, which I don't really have much need for, are actually getting sent down here to this dropper, which then just dumps everything into the lava and gets rid of it. All the unstackable items like armor and bows are also going down and getting disposed of in this lava, because I really don't need that stuff. I can disable that if I want by flipping that switch, and then nothing will end up in the dropper until I flip this back on. And I could also disable any of these individual things if I wanted to collect rotten flesh or arrows for some unthinkable reason. But I could use the addition of a crafter in this farm, because I got all these bones. I could automatically convert them into bone blocks and save myself a lot of space. I don't really feel like bothering to use a crafter on the gunpowder for anything, because I can use gunpowder for TNT or rockets, and don't know how much of which thing I would need, so I'm just gonna leave it as gunpowder for now. I might as well set up for converting the bones into bone blocks. Put 64 buttons plus 48 buttons in the furnace. It's gonna output a single strength of 9 into the side of this, so until this crafter is full and has an output of 9, this won't turn on. Once it is, it'll start putting out those bone blocks now. So this crafter up here has just one unlocked slot. As soon as any bones come into this, it's immediately going to turn them into bone meal and spit it out into this hopper, which drops down into this crafter, which will not activate until it's full, because I have a single strength of 9 coming to the side to make bone blocks and only bone blocks. All I have to do to get it started is to put this hopper... Wait, is this the right chest? Yes, that's the bones. Put this hopper here. This thing's churning out bone blocks. Bone meal, I mean. I just thought of something, though. Let me slow that down a bit. Because I can only fit so much bone meal into the hopper, and I don't want to fill this to overflowing, because it takes a lot longer to craft bone blocks than it does to craft the bone meal. It should easily keep up with the rates of the farm. It's just that I built up with well over an hour's worth of bones before I started running this. Well, I filled a shulker box full of gunpowder, and if ever I need more bone meal, yeah, it's there. I'm very happy with this farm. Yeah, why did I make a creeper farm? Everybody asked me to make a creeper farm, so I made a freaking creeper farm, but I don't like them. General purpose mob farm, that's the way to go. Not only do I get more freaking gunpowder than the creeper farm that I made originally got, but I also am getting bones and string and a bunch of garbage I'm throwing out. All this other sundry extra stuff. It's just so much better. I'm never going to build another freaking creeper farm again. So even though this latest update broke the creeper farm, I'm happy I was able to build something even better to take its place. There's a lot to the latest update besides just trial chambers. I'm all about farming. I think I've made that clear by now, all about making farms. And this new update has made some new farms possible that were never possible before. And I might start looking into that next time on Amon Chooses Divergence SMP.